Star Wars started back in 1977 with a film that hit the theaters and blew everyone's mind. It was quickly followed by other films, The Empire Strikes Back, my favorite, and in 1983's Return of the Jedi. I think I speak for everyone who's super excited for Episode 7, The Force Awakens. But to celebrate these original classic films, we have three amazing best-selling authors with us today who have retold the original Star Wars movies for an entire new generation. I'm here today with best-selling author Alex Bracken, known for the Darkest Minds series.
Yep.
Adam Gidwitz, known for A Tale Dark and Grim, and Tom Angleberger, one of my favorites, the Origami Yoda series. Guys, here we are, BookCon.
Amazing.
Let's talk some Star Wars. I wanted, I got a chance to do a little bit of a Star Wars retelling myself, which was completely insane. I know you guys feel the same way. How do you guys think Star Wars has impacted your books that you've done up to this point?
Well, for me personally, Star Wars was what taught me as a storyteller that characters are crucial to drawing the audience in and making them be able to relate to even like the most fantastical premise and world that they're situated in. So as long as there's a character that it has so much heart and is really driving the story,
yeah.
I've always kind of carried that with me as a writer and made sure to focus first on the character and build a world off of them and build the story off of them.
So when you saw Star Wars for the first time, who was that character?
For me, that character was Luke, which is perfect because Star Wars fits into the traditional hero's journey so perfectly.
Yeah.
And so that's actually like another great thing about Star Wars for young writers is that it teaches them sort of that traditional story arc and how all of these different characters fit into it like a puzzle.
Yeah.
So Luke, when he has his whole world opened up to this wonder, it's incredible, and you feel the same way as a viewer.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. What about you, Adam? Like, I mean, you tend towards darker,
right.
Like grim type fairy tales.
Right, I do. And so, A Tale Dark and Grim, in it, the main characters are Hansel and Gretel. And in the beginning, they run away from their home because their father does something scary.
Yeah.
And the whole book, they're trying to find a new family, and in the end, they're going to have to reconcile with their father. There's a big reconciliation, but also a confrontation. When you're writing a big ending that involves the father being the bad guy, you can't not have Empire Strikes Back looming over you,
yeah.
breathing,
yeah.
and you have to be careful. You can't just, you can't be like, Hansel and Gretel, I am your father, right? You can't do that. Certainly the way that George Lucas used the hero's journey and resolved the father issues absolutely forefront in my mind when I'm writing the resolution for my first book, A Tale Dark and Grim.
Nice.
Yeah.
So so some people may not know exactly, we're all referring to the hero's journey. I think a lot of writers and filmmakers do that. Could you just explain a little bit what the hero's journey is?
Sure. So Joseph Campbell was one of the first people to sort of talk about the hero's journey, and he went through old myths and folklore and found that they shared a basic structure. There's a protagonist who usually has to leave his home in order to save it. He goes out into the world. He meets different characters along the way. One is usually a father figure. Another is sort of a mother figure. And often by the end, one of the his mentor figure has to die, right?
Yeah,
which we see
in
in Star Wars and Harry Potter and all over the
Lord
place.
of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
has to happen.
Yeah.
And then at the end, often there is a confrontation with the father figure. That is a major feature of the hero's journey. And George Lucas was very explicit in following the hero's journey, and Joseph Campbell became one of his mentors.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've thought about that often in the books I've written.
Yeah.
It's almost so powerful that it's hard to veer away from it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's not a secret formula, but it feels like it could help you if you were ever stuck with a plot.
It's so deeply ingrained, I feel, because it's just been a part of our mythology in all cultures' mythologies. Really, it's like the universal story.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're working on your book, and I found in drafts, oh, my book's just not working. It's not working, and then like, oh, I deviated from the hero's journey. Oops, and I fix it.
That'll show you.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tom, and when you did the Origami Yoda books, did you use the hero's journey?
Yeah, I did, and the thing
Did
is,
you?
I would not even know about the hero's journey if not for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that really got me was the garden, where there's all this chaos and fighting, and then all of a sudden there's this beautiful place, and the hero can just take it easy for as long as they want. There's no hurry, just stay here. It's beautiful. And the hero's got to be like, that would be nice, but I've got to go.
Yeah.
I've got to finish.
Kind of test their
And,
mettle.
yeah. So I actually have that. That's one of my books, is the book where Dwight, it is one of my Origami Yoda books.
Yeah.
Dwight goes to a different school. Everybody is so nice to him. You know, oh, we think you're so special. We love you here. And eventually Dwight has to realize that he's more of a pet than a friend at that school. And he has to go back back to the other school where it's a lot tougher on a daily basis, but it's also, he's a real person at that school.
And so obviously Star Wars clearly affected it, but I feel like with the Origami Yoda books, you created your own. Star Wars is almost a MacGuffin. I mean, to use film termage with the Origami Yoda books. Would you say that's the case, or?
Well, it's a lot more than that, because whenever I've like run out of ideas or anything like that, I can always go back to Star Wars for something new.
Yeah.
And there have been times when I'm like writing and I'm like, I just don't know, I'm out. And I would watch the movies again, and Yoda would say something, and I'd be like, oh yeah,
got another book. That's another book.
So so it has really shaped things. There was a time when we weren't sure we'd be able to use the Star Wars characters, and I was going to have to rewrite it for something else.
What would have worked?
What could it have been?
Lame.
Yeah.
And even if I had gotten one book out of that, who would have wanted another book and another book?
Yeah.
But with the Star Wars, it drove itself. It was like, well, of course Darth Vader's going to show up.
Yeah.
You know, of course the princess has to come and straighten things out. You know?
Yeah.
It all just, Star Wars is just amazing.
And
Lucasfilm
was so supportive, right?
Oh my gosh, they were incredible.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. So a lot of us, I would say, though, yes, you have Star Wars as a component of your books, but you're an original storyteller. I know for myself, one of the reasons why I did the picture book version of Star Wars was I would do anything to get a kid to pick up a book and read a book. And that, if it's Star Wars, then that's exciting. Yeah. But then, so we all get the call, right? We all each individually got approached by Lucasfilm and then the Disney Corporation to do a version of Star Wars. I was like blown. I was so excited, but then it dawned on me, this is a lot. This is like a really tall order. How do you do it?
Well, for me personally, I grew up reading Star Wars books. My dad was a Star Wars collector. All I wanted to read from ages like 8 to 14 were Star Wars books. Especially, I love the Young Jedi Knight series with like Han and Leia's kids. And I think all of those stories are now, what are they? They're calling them like the legacy books rather than the expanded
Legends.
Star Wars Legends. Thank you. So it was. Those books were the books that made me become such a big reader, and so I felt so much pressure initially that I was like, how do I get over that initial hurdle of like nerves and panic?
Yeah.
But, like I just like reconnected to my love of the series, and I wanted to make sure that there would be I knew that there were other kids out there like me who could become readers by just like diving into Star Wars, into the movies, into the TV shows that they've been watching. And I think that it's going to be really exciting for them to read different like takes on the original stories, don't you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope so. I hope so.
That's what we're banking on.
Yep.
Working hard for it.
We were all at Star Wars Celebration recently, and I remember you had said to us that you'd been going to Celebration for years with your pop. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so my dad was a Star Wars collector, which basically meant from when I was in first grade right up until he passed away a few years ago, we would go to Star Wars conventions. Every weekend we'd be hitting up the toy stores, like looking for the new releases. He was on a first name basis with people at Toys R Us, which as a kid was so cool because we got to go into the back room and
it's like a celebrity.
I know. Yeah. It's like, here's Dan, he's ready.
Do you have the case I'm looking for? Yes, the rare Boba Fett. Yeah.
So I have like a very personal connection to Star Wars, and so I mean, from age, I think the first Star Wars convention I went to was in like '96. So I was 9 years old, and now I'm 28. And so it was amazing to go back to the celebration this past, when was that? April.
Yeah.
And
almost 20 years later.
I know,
yeah.
It's crazy.
Amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just been like 20 years of Star Wars, basically.
So in some ways, you almost didn't even have to think about it a little bit. You almost could, like, if you just, I don't mean it that way, but almost it's in there. It's all in there. It's almost like just a relax, go to your writer place and start writing.
It was crazy the things that I like suddenly remembered about the universe that
Yeah.
I would pull out. I think like
Yeah.
Tom was like, how did you know they spoke the language Basic? I was like, because I've read so many of these books and been around this culture for so long. And
I was very impressed that
Thank
you
you.
threw
I
basic
know.
in there.
And when Tom is impressed, that's
know,
serious.
that's
That's
the
legit.
highest praise.
Because that guy knows.
I know.
I would take your praise over George Lucas's praise. That's
Yes.
how
Whoa.
Tom
Yeah.
is like ultimate,
He knows.
ultimate Star Wars
Yeah,
fan.
yeah. And I know for you, Adam, you know, obviously you love fairy tales.
Yeah.
You've said often that there's a lot of correlation.
Absolutely. And you know, I mean, to give the folks like a little bit of background information or like sort of behind the scenes information, I wasn't approached directly by Lucasfilm. I was approached by you. I got an email from Tony DiTerlizzi being like, "Hey man, you want to hop on the phone sometime?" And I was like, "What? Yes. Why is amazing
Do I owe
bestseller
him
Tony
money? Why-
DiTerlizzi writing to me?" I was like, "I'd love to." We get on the phone. I'm in a hotel room on tour. And we start talking, and we talk for like 45 minutes
we
about
talked for a while.
anything, stories and Wizard of Oz and Tintin and all the way storytelling techniques. I mean, it was awesome. But after
Yeah.
45 minutes, I was like, what are we doing? Like, why are we talking?
Interviewing him?
This-
What was happening?
No, it wasn't that at all. No. It was just they were looking for
Figure out
a
whether it was gonna
diverse
work.
list of authors that they
Yeah.
really wanted to do these books.
Cool.
And
So then finally I was like, what's up, Tony? And he was like, well, there's this opportunity. And when he told me, I was like,
Amway,
oh,
you're
whoa.
gonna love this.
Yeah.
Opportunity with a capital O.
With a giant O, illuminated letter O. So, but then when I accepted it, which was immediately, I was thinking, what do I really, I mean, I don't have that history with Star Wars that you do. I love the movies, but I don't have the history or the deep knowledge that you have. And so I thought, well, what does a guy who knows about fairy tales and dark fairy tales know about The Empire Strikes Back? And it turns
Everything.
out everything.
Yeah.
Because The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars is a fairy tale. Lucas said he was setting out to write a fairy tale when
Yeah.
he wrote it.
Yeah.
And Empire Strikes Back is the darkest of the movies, so the dark fairy tale thing worked perfectly. Specifically, the main character of every fairy tale is an empty character. They don't have a lot of personality traits. You know, Cinderella, we know almost nothing about her.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose for that. And the purpose is that children can put themselves into her shoes, into her golden shoes or her glass
Yeah,
shoes, depending on which
that's
tradition you're reading, and follow her. Yeah, sorry,
I
drop a
thought
little
they were-
knowledge
I
on
thought
you.
they were fur slippers in the original.
In French, they were fur.
Only in the
In
French.
German,
My
they're gold.
mistake.
Yeah, in English, they
Yeah.
mistranslated ver from fur. Anyway,
Okay.
to glass, regardless. And you can follow in her footsteps. So Luke, I think, is an empty character. I think
Empty
that's the
vessel.
reason you identified with him so much,
Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah.
you step into his shoes.
I mean, he's a guy, but he has so few characteristics that you can be him too.
Yeah.
He's not like Han with a sharply defined personality. He's not like Leia, who's a real powerful woman.
Yes.
He's brave and he's kind.
Yeah.
That's about it.
It's interesting you say that too, because I wondered if it's Luke's humble, you know, again, hero's journey stuff,
Yes.
very humble beginnings. If you ask a lot of kids, I also noticed that they also resonate a lot with R2-D2. And I'm not to
Yes.
throw your thing, but I
No.
wonder if it's just because he's the little guy
Yeah,
in this big giant
they can
universe.
identify with him.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
pretty
True.
sassy too for a robot.
He is.
He has a lot of personality for
Yeah.
someone who doesn't speak a language that we understand.
Yes.
Right? He's got a lot of personality. But so what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that these kids who are going to read our books,
Yeah.
the reason that we're writing them is we want kids to fall in love again with those original movies because
Yeah.
some of the kids have maybe fallen off a little bit.
Sure.
And so
Or don't even know him that
who
well.
don't know them
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so to get the kids to fall in love with these stories again, I retold The Empire Strikes Back in the second person. You are Luke. So I took that fairy tale empty character thing even farther.
That's cool.
You are on Hoth. You have to face your father at the end
Wow.
of the end of the book. And that energized the writing for me. I was
Yeah.
struggling when I was writing in the third person, and I said, you know what, let's try second. And that book just flowed out of me.
For a lot of readers out there, second person is hard to write, I think, and not a lot of people do it.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think I did a particularly good job, except that no, the movie it works perfectly for it. As soon as, especially on Dagobah, as soon as you are being trained by Yoda,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I buy
in.
it.
I'm in.
I'm in. So I feel like it really worked. Yeah.
That's great. Tom, obviously you're a encyclopedia of Star Wars tidbits and useless
Honestly,
information.
I really started to think Alex knows more than me, but I've been trying to hide that.
Competition.
You're
We
gonna
got to
have a
do it.
trivia
There's going to
showdown
need to be a trivia
eventually.
showdown that Adam and I will clearly fail, but we'll enjoy watching.
He knows a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, you're going from, I mean, you're taking, for you, this is like sacred stuff.
Right, it is sacred stuff.
You need to write it.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
You know, it was amazing, and some stuff like knowing that I was going to be the one that had to write Yoda's death scene and things like that, that was really intimidating. But in many ways, one of the hardest parts was, I mean, I've known what a speeder bike was for many years. Many years, I've known what a speeder bike was.
Yeah.
And you know, in the movie, they land on indoors. Guy shows up on a speeder bike. You instantly, everybody knows what a speeder bike is after 3 seconds.
Yeah.
How do you can't just write a speeder bike shows up. Now you've got to explain in a book what is a speeder bike. But if you explain it, then you lose the excitement and the action.
Yeah.
You don't want to, you know, fall asleep on indoor. Indoor is thrilling.
Yeah. And speaking of Endor, you really were passionate about making sure the Ewoks were portrayed in a certain way. Yeah.
It's always bothered me, people complaining about the Ewoks. And they're making the same mistake that the Emperor did. They're dismissing them because they're cute. And so I wanted to make sure, cute, they're still cute in my book. I'm not going to make them ugly or something. They're still cute, but that's not going to be your first adjective for them. They're bloodthirsty, they're killers, they're savage. Yeah, they take care of business. I mean, when you think, all right, should we discuss the stormtrooper thing?
Just take us to the end of the film and
all right, because there's a big party.
What is shown to us, but maybe people haven't connected the dots.
All right, well, there's a big party at the end of the book, and they're having this big party. They're chowing down on some substance, right?
Yeah.
But they haven't been hunting. We know they haven't been hunting because they've been busy fighting stormtroopers all day. So you put those two things together,
speculate.
There's a lot of empty stormtrooper helmets and armor around. So that's why in my book it's like, don't eat the stew.
Don't eat the spare ribs. Yeah. That's awesome. I don't think we could end it on a better note, guys. It's been great talking to you guys. We'll talk again real soon.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
All right.
Tony.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Tony.